The rain dripped slowly from the broken streetlights of Quiapo, Manila, mixing with the dust and tears of the city. Neon signs flickered above crowded sidewalks as jeepneys passed by, splashing dirty water onto the pavement. In the middle of this chaos stood Miguel Santos, a thin, barefoot street singer holding a scratched old guitar with only 5 working strings. His clothes were torn, his hands were cold, his stomach had been empty since morning. Yet when Miguel opened his mouth to sing, something magical happened. His voice floated through the noisy streets like a quiet prayer. A few people slowed down, but most continued walking, too busy chasing their own survival. Miguel didn't stop. He closed his eyes and sang louder, pouring every pain, every hunger, every broken dream into each note. Nearby, his little sister Luna sat on a cardboard box, hugging her knees to stay warm. She watched her brother with tired but hopeful eyes. When a man dropped 2 small coins into Miguel's cup, Luna smiled softly, as if it were treasure. After the song ended, Miguel looked at the sky and whispered, "Nene, if you can hear me, I'm still fighting." Suddenly, a foreign tourist stopped. He had tears in his eyes. Quietly, he pulled out his phone and started recording Miguel's voice. Miguel didn't notice. He only kept singing, unaware that this simple moment on a rainy Manila street was about to change his life forever. The camera slowly pulls back, showing the lonely singer surrounded by millions of people, yet standing completely alone, except for his voice. Morning sunlight crept through the cracked window of a tiny internet cafe in Tondo, Manila. The humming of old computers mixed with the noise of traffic outside. Miguel sat nervously in front of a flickering screen, his hands shaking as he opened his email. A stranger from the street had sent him the video link the night before and told him to check your messages. Then he saw it. "Congratulations. You were invited to audition for Ireland's Got Talent." Miguel froze. His heart began to pound so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He read the message again, and again, afraid it might disappear. Tears slowly rolled down his cheeks. He whispered, "This can't be real, I'm just a street singer." He ran outside, breathless, and found Luna waiting near their sleeping spot. When he told her the news, she jumped up and hugged him tightly. "Kuya, you're going to be on TV." She cried with joy, but reality hit quickly. Miguel had no passport, no money, no proper clothes. That night, he sat alone holding his old guitar. After a long silence, he kissed it gently and made the hardest decision of his life. He sold his guitar to a pawn shop. With help from a small church group who heard his story, Miguel received donations for documents and travel. A pastor handed him a borrowed guitar and said, "God gave you this voice for a reason. Don't waste it." Days later, Miguel stood at the airport, wearing second-hand shoes, holding a small bag. As the plane took off, he pressed his forehead against the window, whispering, "Manila, I'll make you proud." Bright studio lights flooded the backstage area of Ireland's Got Talent. The air was filled with nervous whispers, fast footsteps, and the sound of contestants warming up their voices. Miguel stood quietly in the corner, gripping his borrowed guitar tightly against his chest. Surrounded by confident performers wearing designer clothes and shining shoes, Miguel felt small, invisible. His worn jacket and cheap sneakers made him lower his head in embarrassment. His hands were trembling, not from the cold, but from fear. A production assistant approached him with a clipboard. "Next performer, Miguel Santos, from the Philippines." Miguel's heart dropped. He closed his eyes and remembered the streets of Manila, the rain, Luna's smile, the hunger, the long nights of singing for coins. He whispered softly, "Nene, guide me." A camera operator moved closer and asked gently, "Why did you come all the way to Ireland?" Miguel swallowed hard and answered with shaking voice, "Because singing is the only thing I own. I have no money, no family name, only this voice. If I fail today, I go home with nothing." Behind the stage curtain, the crowd's cheers echoed loudly. The judges' silhouettes appeared on the big screen. Miguel wiped his tears quickly, took a deep breath, and stood up straight. The stage manager pointed toward the entrance and said, "You're on." As the doors slowly opened and bright white lights blinded his eyes, Miguel took one final step forward, not knowing if this moment would break him, or change his life forever. The massive stage lights shined down as Miguel walked slowly to the center of the Ireland's Got Talent stage. The audience clapped politely, not knowing what to expect. He adjusted the microphone with shaking hands and looked toward the judge's table. 4 serious faces stared back at him. One judge asked, "What will you be singing today?" Miguel took a deep breath and replied softly, "A song about hunger, dreams, and never giving up." The music began, slow and gentle. Miguel closed his eyes and started to sing. At first, his voice was quiet, fragile, almost trembling. Then suddenly, it grew stronger. Each note carried pain, hope, and years of struggle. The audience slowly stopped whispering. Phones were lowered, eyes widened. Halfway through the song, the camera cut to the judges. One judge covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. Another leaned forward in disbelief. A third quietly wiped his face with a tissue. Miguel reached the high note, powerful, emotional, raw. The entire theater froze. When the final note faded, there was complete silence. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then the crowd exploded into thunderous applause. People stood up, clapping, crying, shouting his name. Miguel stood frozen, breathing heavily, tears streaming down his face. He whispered into the microphone, "This voice is for every poor child who still believes in miracles." The judges stood up, applauding him with tears in their eyes. His voice had not just filled the room. It had touched thousands of hearts. The applause refused to stop. The entire theater was on its feet, clapping and cheering for Miguel. He stood in the middle of the stage, shaking, overwhelmed, unable to believe what was happening. One judge leaned forward, eyes red from crying, and spoke with a trembling voice. "Miguel, in all my years on this show, I have never felt something this real. You didn't just sing, you told your life story." Another judge wiped his tears and added, "You came here with empty pockets, but you walked onto this stage with a heart full of courage. That is true talent." Miguel pressed his hand against his chest, struggling to hold back his emotions. Then the head judge slowly stood up. The room became silent. He walked toward the golden buzzer, looked at Miguel, and said, "The streets of Manila gave you pain, but tonight, the world gives you a chance." Boom! The golden buzzer was pressed. Golden confetti exploded from the ceiling, raining down like falling stars. The audience screamed in excitement. Music played loudly. Lights flashed everywhere. Miguel dropped to his knees, crying uncontrollably. He covered his face, overwhelmed by joy and disbelief. On the big screen, Luna appeared watching from Manila. She was crying and smiling at the same time, shouting, "Kuya, you did it." Miguel looked up, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "This is not only my victory, this is for every poor dreamer who refuses to give up." The camera slowly pulled back, showing golden light surrounding him, a boy who once sang for coins, now singing for the world.